You know, I've always pronounced the name of this game Ristar, but it turns out there's a few people out there that pronounce it Ristar. I'd never really thought about it, but I guess there's different ways to pronounce lots of different words. But I'm just going to stick with Ristar. A pretty late Mega Drive game, a mascot platformer. I think this game might have come from ideas that they had back when they were coming up with ideas for a mascot, and they chose Sonic the Hedgehog, of course, but it took up until 1995, something like that, to finally get around to being able to make one of the other games. So this sort of has the feel of a much earlier Mega Drive game, because games as late as 1995 was starting to have pre-rendered digital graphics, and they weren't all 2D pixel art. But this game does have a very like a 1991 feel to it, even though it's much later than that. But it is a absolutely class game. Let's play some Ristar. There you go, what a quality intro. I think this game has quality right the way through from start to finish. I've never actually known how to pronounce it. I think I said that in the intro, didn't I? I always just assumed it was Ristar. In the options there's the option for a password, but this game doesn't have passwords in between levels. You actually get a password when you finish the game. It's like an official cheat code, and there's quite a lot of different passwords actually. But that main character definitely has a Sonic the Hedgehog look to him. He definitely has that 90s mascot look. Yeah, what you can do sometimes is you can grab onto things and sort of ride up walls, and when you get to the top, sometimes there's a goodie up there. So the main skill in this game is using your arms, your really long arms, to grab hold of enemies or to grab hold of things to climb. You can see he doesn't have a very big jump really.
Look at the detail in those graphics, especially in that background. You know, backgrounds are usually a bit of an afterthought, and a lot of Mega Drive parallax backgrounds do have very repetitive tiles. But the people that did art for this game did a really good job of hiding that kind of repetitive tile thing that some 8-bit and 16-bit games were guilty of. Great use of colours as well. So this thing here, you can launch yourself quite far, but they don't really appear very often in the levels. Just trying to get up here so I can get to the bonus stage. And here we are at the bonus stage. The more of these items you get, the better ending you get, and you'll get a different password. I've never finished this game before myself, but I have seen the ending on YouTube, and it's a quality ending. And it's just like absolutely everything in this game is about as good as Sega could have done on the Mega Drive. I think Sega knew that this was going to be one of the final games that they made for the Mega Drive, so they just decided to go all out with it. And you know, it's not like a massive technical showcase like Games by Treasure. Fairly safe, actually. A fairly safe 2D platformer. I guess you could say they've gone for quality over quantity. Of course, it's well known that compared to pretty much all of its competitors, the Mega Drive couldn't put as many colours on screen. Now, I've got to say, a limit of 60 colours on screen isn't actually too bad. You can do quite a lot with that. But yet, some Mega Drive games do look pretty ugly, and they do suffer from dithering quite a lot. But, I mean, this game looks fine. The choice of colours is really, really good, actually. So if you'd bought this game in 1995, then I think you would have been perfectly happy with it. You know, looking at it doesn't really show its age. Of course, this was around the time when the industry started to move into that everything has to be 3D era, when 2D games were just considered old. But there were still 2D games. So if you're comparing this to games on the Atari Jaguar, or 2D games on the 32X, or even the odd Sega Saturn and PlayStation 2D game, you know, this holds up really well. The Mega Drive still does the business. It got games right up until about 1997, although they're starting to get a bit few and far between at that point. Do you know what? There's a little guy there. Can you see that guy dancing in the background? He's actually throwing things at me. I think this is the guy that asked for help from the opening cutscene. He's been taken over by this little guy on his back. This boss music is brilliant. Right, here we go, off to another planet then. Wonderful. I don't know if you noticed, but there is a little bit of speech from the character in this as well. Oh yeah, this is the water level. You can sort of see the Sonic the Hedgehog DNA in this as well, because it uses that same palette changing trick to do the water. It'd be interesting to find out if this came out before Knuckles Chaotix, because around this time, 1995, Sega did have the 32X. Well, they had the Sega Saturn as well. But of course, this is proof that they were still making Mega Drive games. They spread themselves a little bit thin in that regard. But I read quite recently in the Sega Retro forums, but the 32X was actually really just for America, because they didn't like the idea of the Sega Saturn. And then that got dropped pretty quickly because it didn't really take off. I've always looked at the numbers that it sold and thought that it wasn't actually that bad. The 32X ended up selling about 800,000 units. And that's an add-on for the Mega Drive, so you know, this is not new people, this is people that already own a Mega Drive or Genesis. I think this game came from Japan, but the Japanese still made quite a few 32X games. Yeah, Sega of Japan did end up doing Virtua Racing Deluxe, Knuckles Chaotix, Stellar Assault, and Virtua Fighter for the 32X, all in a fairly short period of time, obviously. But yeah, they worked on a lot of different things, because they were still... I think they basically stopped making Master System games at that point, but they were still making Game Gear games. They were still making Mega Drive games. I don't really know about the Mega CD. Anyway, to talk about this level, thankfully those blue stars restore all of your stars. Oh, I love the music in this level. And actually, I do find this game to be really quite easy. I wouldn't say it's necessarily short, because for this video I only had a chance to get through the first two levels. I wish I'd showed off more, but there just wasn't time. No one's going to watch a 2-hour video. What is that little star thing there? It's something that really stood out to me whilst playing this now, that they went really big on graphics for a Mega Drive. With these systems, the way they're actually designed is that all of the graphics are made up of very small squares. So it's quite tempting, really, to save memory more than anything else, to have very repetitive looking graphics. But the people that worked on this game did an absolutely fantastic job of hiding the fact that that's the way you have to go about things. I mean, they might have, I don't know, they might have had the sort of game engine that just constantly loads in new graphics on the fly. I know some games used to do that, but whatever they did, whether it's just clever design or a massive cartridge with lots of different graphics on it, it all looks very good. It doesn't even look like a typical Mega Drive game, really. This level is a little bit, it's a little bit of a plod. You're going through lots of different rooms and you have to find them blue circles. Yeah, they always spawn enemies, but they're also the switch to open up the next area. It is a bit of a plod, but it actually doesn't really feel like it. You know, there's always that cliche of water levels being the worst levels because they're so slow. But no, this level's not too bad. That's quite a clever use of the different palettes. As the water rises above them, it makes them look like they come alive. But then, of course, you can always kill them before they actually come alive. I didn't own this game back in 1995. I didn't really have many Mega Drive games actually, and this was one that I rented from Blockbuster Video. And I actually remember, I used to rent quite a lot of games, but there were some games that were only £1 and some games that were £3.50, and no matter what you rented, you always had it for 3 days. I remember liking the look of this game and it was only £1, and so I selected it when we visited the video rental store. I guess it was Blockbuster Videos. But when we got to the car and I checked, because obviously you have to check whether the instructions are actually in there or not. It had a different game in there. And I remember it was some Nickelodeon license game. I think it was Are Real Monsters? Something like that. And I was just like, nah, we've got to go back, Dad. We've got to go back and change it to the game that I chose. So we went back and obviously asked the guy to put the correct game in there. And the guy behind the counter checked the prices. And the game, the wrong game, was more expensive than this. And he said, you know what? You know what? You really could have got a bargain there. You could have got this more expensive game cheaper. I remember thinking even at the time that some licensed game is not going to be better than this thing. This mascot platformer. I think I had magazines with cheat codes in them, so I think I didn't really play this properly, like a stupid child. Just look at those colours and that pixel art. Yeah, this game doesn't even look like a Mega Drive game. Look at this though, they drew all of these graphics just for this little boss encounter. This is a very simple boss really. All you have to do is, when he rushes across the front layer where you are, you just have to try and grab him, which is easier said than done because he's pretty fast. Who was that guy that founded Sega Technical Institute? Mark Cerny, back when they just released the Master System in Japan, and he made a couple of Master System games for them, and he said that back then Sega were only interested in the quantity of games that they had, so they could say that they had more games available than Nintendo. They didn't have any third-party help, or very little third-party help, so they must have really churned them games out. But later on, Sega learned that it's the quality of the game that matters, not the quantity. Sega did produce some damn good quality games. That carried on into the Saturn and the Dreamcast days. I kind of wonder how well this did commercially. that is as much as I can reasonably squeeze into one video without it becoming too long. So there you go, that's Ristar. Thank you for watching.